off, let me introduce to you the first panel of many this morning. The great Victor Montagliani, president of Concacaf, and also US men's soccer legend and Fox Sports analyst, Alexi Lalas, who's also a Twitter sensation, by the way. So welcome both to the stage of Soccerex, America's 2022.
All right, Victor. Let's try not to suck, okay?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay. It's on, right?
We played so long ago, I think.
Thank you very much.
There was a sweeper in play.
Oh, my goodness, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day. Ooh, look at pretty people, pretty people. Okay. All right, Victor, we got to, we got to dance for these people here, all right?
Absolutely.
You ready?
Vamos.
Okay. In my capacity at Fox, and along with my friend Stu Holden and others, we are constantly assessing players and teams, but oftentimes players. When I look at you, all right, I say this is a changed man. This is a fit man. This is a man that's in form. Have you done something? Have you changed? What's going on here?
Yeah, actually, the pandemic was good for me.
Oh, it was good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I maybe, you didn't travel as much, so no rich foods. You're staying in your same bed, and your body recognizes that might need to get back to where it needed to be. So I had to get ready for some of the Legends games and some of the games. So I decided to maybe put myself first for once, and it's turned out all right.
Well, you look. Give him a clap. I mean, that's worthy of a clap. You do. You look wonderful. We were talking to Javier Hernandez, Chicharito, last week, and he's done a whole lot of things actually over the last couple of years, too, including he got rid of dairy.
Yes.
Did you do anything in particular?
Yeah, actually, that and not got rid of it, but pasta, which is really hard.
Pasta. Oh.
Yeah, very difficult, but.
All right, enough about how great you look. All right, CONCACAF. We live in interesting times. We live in beautiful times and sad and depressing times on and off the field and different stuff. But when it comes to CONCACAF, this is a big year. This is a big year for soccer in general around the world. When you look at 2022, and I guess take me back to when you were looking to 2022, what were some of the priorities and things that you were looking at as regards to what CONCACAF wanted to focus on?
Obviously for us, it's always about the pitch, right? So that's the first thing you think about. What are the competitions? What are some of the development programs? One of the things we wanted to always emphasize was football always had to come first. And I know that people like to say those things, the slogans, but we live it day to day. And for those of us that know us at CONCACAF, we really mean it. And sometimes decisions have to be made not in the best interest of commercial reasons, but for football reasons. And we knew that 2022 was a big year. It's the end of a cycle. Our cycles work on World Cups, and so it was the end of that cycle with qualification as we know it. Obviously then the start of another cycle with our women's, and we launched a new ecosystem, and our women's championship is this summer. And then obviously all the youth tournaments and the club events that are sort of all culminating as well. So we knew it was a big year, and it's turning out to be that, and culminating in obviously the World Cup in Qatar in November.
When you talk about planning out a year, there's been a lot of talk, especially over the last 6 months, with regards to the international match calendar, and obviously the talk about Biennial World Cups. And I know we've talked about it before, and it's actually, I think, been really good and healthy to talk about these things and bring up these things, because all the stakeholders sometimes have different ways of looking at it. When you envision the future and some of the things that people are talking about, whether you agree with it or not, how do you see some of those things coming into play?
Yeah, listen, it's been a talked about subject, but the reality is that the plan that FIFA launched with Arsene and Lalas wasn't. I know everybody's been focusing on the Men World Cup every 2 years, but there's a lot more to that plan than just that one tournament. Obviously, it shows you how important that tournament is,
sure,
because everybody just refers to the 2-year World Cup, but they forget that we're also talking about mandatory rest periods. We're talking about changing the calendar so that players don't have to travel as many windows. All those things are good. Youth championships that are, or youth World Cups every year, so you don't lose generation of players. And so there's a lot good in that plan. The reality is, as it relates to your World Cup, you know, we're always open to the process. And I think one of the things that we've learned, you know, listen, I think the world has changed in many ways, some of it for the worst, as you mentioned earlier, but a lot of it for the good. You know, and for instance, just the issue of health, mental health, and talking about things. And I think, you know, football has to learn that no idea is a bad idea. You might not agree with it, I might not agree with it, but I think we need to have that process because the game deserves dialogue, open dialogue, and it's a global sport. And FIFA's doing this job to push this dialogue, whether you agree with it or not. I mean, we at Concacaf, I've stated our position clearly that it's problematic. There's one thing we're not sure about is how the ecosystem that currently exists, for instance, in our case, League of Nations and Gold Cup, how does that fit in? But we're also in favor of ensuring that we continue to grow, that you know, we lost the Confederations Cup and we haven't replaced it. So, you know, we've put in a global Nations League. Do we need a global Nations League? Do we need a Confederations Cup back? Because there's always this attitude that there's too much football. You know, the players, and I'm like, actually, it's the opposite. There's not enough football in the world. And people will go, really? I said, well, yeah, sure. If you talk to Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, he'll tell you that. But that's not the reality in 210 countries. And then we lived it at CONCACAF. We didn't have enough football, which is why we expanded our Gold Cup, which is why we put our League of Nations. I mean, even some of our bigger nations, US and Mexico, players actually don't play enough compared to some of the top players in the world. And so you can't make that comment and just pick out the 0.001% of the players in the world. The reality in the rest of the world, there's not enough opportunities for players. And so, you know, and it's a global game. Yes, we all know where the, you know, sort of the breadbasket of football is, and it's in Europe, but, you know, we need to look at it from a global perspective and realize that the solutions have to be from a global perspective, not hurting anybody. And we're not saying we should be hurting, you know, African football or European football or whatever. But I think we need to take a step back and really look at, you know, when we make these statements that are a bit bombastic at times and a bit negative at times. Okay, you might be only looking at the 22 players that you train every day, but if you look at it from a global perspective, that's actually not factual. And so, how do we address your issues that those top players are not playing 90 games a year? And I'm not sure playing 10 national team games a year is really the issue there. It's maybe because you have too many domestic cups or too many club games that maybe are irrelevant. So maybe there's a balance there. Maybe, you know, this is where you got to come to the table and have those holistic discussions.
So when people are talking about either making the World Cup bigger, adding teams, making it biennial, it's also relative to giving more opportunities. And you're responsible for all of the members of CONCACAF, the haves, the have-nots, everybody in between. And so when you go to them and you go and talk to a young boy, a young girl, what are you telling them in terms of the additional opportunities and pathways that CONCACAF is working on to give them the opportunity to star and to go on to great things on the field?
Yeah, and listen, I was just in Cuba, and I went to a training session of their women's national team program, and they had U17 right up to the senior team. You know, and you could see it in their eyes when I spoke to them about the opportunities that they're going to have as young women athletes in the new ecosystem, you know, and playing against countries that they only saw on a map. And, you know, when would they play against a Central American country? Because we completely opened up the ecosystem. You know, those are moments that you know that you're doing the right thing. And so for me, it's important that when I speak to young players and when we look at young players, that they have the most opportunity they can, not just within their own domestic situation, but also beyond those borders, to allow them to sort of, you know, have an opportunity to find their way in the game. As we know, not everybody's going to be a professional player. That's not a reality. But somewhere along the line, the game will give them something and give them maybe an education, maybe a skill, but teach them skills. And really at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create what I call consumers of football. And consumers of football is just people that stay in the game. They might become broadcasters. They might become presidents. They might become, all these companies we see behind us. Those are what I call consumers of football, and then the obvious ones, which are the fans, the people that consume the game. That really is one of our primary jobs, is as an industry, is to sustain our industry and create that. And how you do that is at a very young age.
When it comes to the women's game, I know you've touched on it a little bit, but I'd ask you to go a little bit more in depth of the things that you're doing, because there are challenges on the men's side, there are challenges on the women's side, and you have to make decisions and difficult decisions. So what are some of the things that CONCACAF is doing? Because it's not just about being the right thing to do. There is also a business behind it, and this is an exploding opportunity, I think, when it comes to the women's game. So what's CONCACAF doing on that side? Yeah,
so for instance, from a competition standpoint, we announced our Gold Cup now. Our Women's Gold Cup in 2024, which also will have, obviously the majority of teams will be CONCACAF teams, but will have an invitational component to it. So it'll be an international tournament. Our World Cup qualifying process is already started, and it's a home and away situation. So you have more chances to play rather than just a centralized tournament. We'll have a final centralized tournament as well in July. So those are just more opportunities for the players to play. And same in terms of our investment through our development programs and just bringing some of the grassroots players into play, giving them that exposure to the game for the first time with local coaches, even with some sort of legend coaches, so that they can see themselves in the mirror a little bit. And so those are some of the specific things we're doing from a competition standpoint. Even in terms of allowing, for instance, we had an Olympic qualifying and we had World Cup qualifying. It just doesn't make sense to have two tournaments. We would rather invest that money into allowing everybody to play, because the Olympic process was very, very limited. And so we incorporated that into our W Championship, where you're qualifying for both major events. That allowed us to reinvest the money into a longer qualifying process, and also to create a second major tournament, which is a Gold Cup.
The ramp that everybody talks about going into 2026, that ramp is paved with opportunity, but you have to be ready. So when you look at 2026 and what is going to happen, not just for the three countries involved, but for everybody, and in particular CONCACAF, what's CONCACAF doing? How are you thinking about ways to maximize the opportunity that comes in 2026, but to be prepared leading up to that?
Yeah, no, listen, and what amazes me is that every country I go to in our region, a lot of their strategic plans are linked to 26. They see it as a great opportunity, some to qualify, obviously, others the dream of qualifying, and obviously, and others to see how, just for instance, leading up to 26, whether it's a Gold Cup or League of Nations, to go to that next level. And so it's a real anchor for a lot of the strategic plans. Which is great, and it shows you how the region is plugged into it. It is, as you said, it's a co-hosted World Cup, 3 nations, but it speaks more to the region, and that happened with the bid itself. Although the 3 nations obviously were leading the bid, but it was really pushed by all 41 countries, knowing full well what a major tournament of that ilk in this region could mean for them just back at home, and how they could connect to an event of that nature.
Where do you think the final is going to be?
Where the final's going to be?
Where's the final going to be in 26?
Well, we know it'll be in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to narrow it down a little?
No.
If you had your way.
If I had my way...
it'd be in Vancouver.
Yeah, sure, Vancouver. No, the reality is there's stadiums. At the end of the day, you got to have that world-class stadium. And so, it almost picks itself in some ways, right? So, there's some stadiums that are obviously not at that level. They're at a level for other games, but you got half a dozen or so stadiums that have the capacity to host an event like a World Cup final, where the world just comes in on that day.
So we talk a lot about what happens on the field, but part of the job and the challenge is monetizing that. There's a lot of people here that are involved in the business of soccer, and the business is growing and getting bigger. How do you see the money that's out there and the businesses out there when they look at the game, and in particular from our region when it comes to CONCACAF?
Yeah, like any business, at the end of the day, as an investor, you're looking at your return on investment. Now, how do you define that return is different depending on the investor. And so for us, it's really, we have great partners at CONCACAF, and I'm sure they always look at it from an economic standpoint, but what I've learned with our partners is they understand what it means to be long-term partners and what it means to invest in the long-term vision. And sometimes that means that perhaps your EBITDA is not where you want it to be year one, but eventually we'll get there because you are investing with your partner in the product. And so all of these moves we've made in these competitions, a lot of them are expenses. They're not necessarily, bottom line right now. And our partners have been, in with 2 feet on it. Why? Because they understand that this is an investment in the game, in our region, in our people. You're investing in people. And so for us, that to us is the long-term vision, I think, that we took. We announced our 2030 strategy in December. So it's a 10-year plan, something that hasn't been done at our level before. The core of that sort of 2030 plan is an infrastructure project that we're going to build, a youth technical center for CONCACAF in the region. There'll be a complete process for that.
Where's that going to be?
There'll be a process, an RFP.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be an RFP. And I mean, if you want it in your backyard, you can bid for it.
Okay.
Alex, so
all right.
I know you got a nice place out in California.
Could be tight, but
yeah,
okay.
Okay, no problem. And for us, obviously, we'll have standards and things that we need for that. And so, those are things that I think are long term. But if your partners don't buy into that vision, it's going to be very difficult to monetize it in the end. And listen, as my grandfather always told me, right? Don't ever chase money because you'll never catch it. So chase the right thing, and it'll follow you. And I think, our strategy is always that. Always kind of do the right thing, which is putting football first, and eventually that revenue catches up with you.
You've talked a lot about opportunities, and so let's jump back to 2026. Obviously, with the three countries, we don't know how it's going to all shape out, but it's an expanded World Cup in terms of numbers. How does that impact CONCACAF? You have the 3 teams that, they're going to automatically qualify. In your crystal ball, ultimately, how do you think it's going to shake out in terms of how many teams potentially CONCACAF could send to that World Cup?
Well, I've stated clearly that we need to have 8 qualify. So 3 obviously automatic, 3 direct throughout whatever the qualifying process looks like. And then we have 2 opportunities at a playoff because we're the host, we get an extra half spot. And so my expectation was we win those playoffs. I've made it very clear to the Caribbean and Central America. Obviously, they're going to have to, fight that off, but I expect that we're going to have 8 countries at the 2026 World Cup.
That'll be awesome. You look at a team like El Salvador, which I think is really, really improved.
They've done really well in
heading in that direction. So that opportunity is big. All right, when we talk about FIFA, we talk about all of the membership, and your colleague Gianni Infantino has to deal with all of these different levels of membership, and everybody that wants different things. You have to do the same thing when it comes to CONCACAF. How do you balance that when you do have, shall we say, elites, haves and have-nots within that are incredibly important to the business, with the recognition that you are in that position to do what's good for the collective as opposed to just the individual?
Yeah, we have a saying, I don't know who coined it. It might have been me, but
take it.
I'll take it. We have 41 realities and 1 truth. And the 1 truth is football. And as much as somebody's GDP is 100 times bigger than somebody else's in our region, which is the reality, we have the poorest country with a GDP and also the richest country with a GDP. And they happen to both be in CONCACAF. But the truth is, from a footballing perspective, they're actually the same. They're all looking for players. They all want to develop players. They're all looking for coaches. They all want their federations to run better. They're all looking for sponsors. They're all looking for economics. Sure, the numbers might be different. The budgets might be different. So there is some differences. But when you put that aside, it's really all the same. It's a pitch, 11-11, and they're all looking to succeed at that level. And they're all really looking for the same thing. So, whether I'm supporting the U.S. Soccer or Canada Soccer or Mexico, who, are obviously 3 big federations, sure, or whether I'm supporting Anguilla, Montserrat, they're the same issues, right? Now, you might have a different dollar figure to them, but the issue itself is really the same, because football which is why we love the sport, is the same all over the world.
Your grandfather gave you good advice about chasing money, but money is important and money can help change things. It doesn't solve all the issues out there. When you go to some of these countries that are in dire need of the resources in order to do that, give me some of the challenges, not specific necessarily, it's just you need more money, but some of the challenges that you see that is consistent through a lot of these places that you're going to.
Yeah, listen, I think one of the biggest challenges is the expense of travel, right, in our region. Comparing it to Europe, I mean, it's not expensive, relatively speaking, to travel in Europe. I mean, you can run a national team, you could put your team in an Uber and go play in some places, right? Let's be honest. You can't do that in CONCACAF, right? And so, we just don't have, as many airlines or whatever. So the biggest challenge is just travel. And with that is also things like even trying to get equipment in. And I mean, my first year as president 6 years ago, the number one question I got asked when I kind of toured all 41 countries in a lot of countries is, we need more balls, which was amazing to me. I'm like, oh, really? Right? Their access to balls. And yeah, they could get a ball, but, paying $200 for a branded ball is not really what you want to have in a development type of situation. So those are some of the challenges that are economic and specific in terms of that we have to deal with, and we have addressed it. We've actually, eliminated a lot of those issues for our members because of some of the partnerships that we've had in our League of Nations, reducing the travel costs to almost nothing because we are, we've performed very well economically. So we are kind of trying to knock down those walls, but those are some of the biggest challenges in our region.
All right, as we wind this conversation down, I've talked to people like you, people that are in positions of power and authority that can affect change, people that are, politicians, and that's not a bad word, but they understand that there's politics out there. But I also know you, and I know that you're a romantic. I know the way that you think about the game isn't just business. What first drew you to this game? Does that still burn inside you when it comes to that love and that beauty that attracted you? And do you see that continuing going forward, whether it's for CONCACAF or more in general in the world?
Yeah, I mean, before I answer your question specifically, I always get a bit of a knee-jerk reaction when I hear names like, power and this and that. Like that's something in football we need to really get away from, because at the end of the day, as a leader, and everybody out here is a leader in their own respective ways. I mean, really, we're here. Leadership is about service. It's not about power, right? And I think we have too many bad examples in the world, including in world football, where leadership is about power. It's not about power. It's about service. And I think we need to really live that. Because if you really love the game, like I know you do, and as you know I do, listen, at the end of the day, I was born into this game. My father, I have uncles that played pro, and my brother, and so the family's a football family. When your garage is painted my dad's favorite team, his truck is painted that, I'm not sure you got much of a choice in life. At the end of the day, I always say that I always feel, regardless of whatever position I have in football, that I'm still the 12-year-old kid with a pair of shorts on, a pair of boots, playing donkey against the wall with my buddies. And at the end of the day, I still want, I'm sure you're like this too, Lex. At the end of the day, I know you can't do it. I still want to play. Mm-hmm. I still have dreams of, I wake up going, oh, did I score? Like, I thought I scored a goal in a big game. And when I watch a national team play, I'm like, I want to be on the pitch. There is still this sense of, I want to belong to the game as a player. I know it's not a reality, and you always want to do that. And I don't care at what level that you've played the game, you always think you're, for the people that I know that are like me, you always think you're a footballer. And I think if you can just keep that and know that every decision you make has to be for footballers, you'll probably do it right.
Well, I think we can end on that note. I think that was very, very good. You do have power, though, all right? And that's okay, but it's how you harness it, how you use it, and how you use it to good effect. And I think you're doing a lot of good stuff on and off the field for Concacaf, for all the membership, which I know isn't always easy in terms of what we talk about. I'm going to bring Alejandro back up here. Let's give him a hand, right? I mean, if for nothing else, I mean, you look so good.
Thanks, Lex.
We have a very special presentation, so I'm going to bring Alejandro back up here and to finish it off here.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Alexi. Mr. Montagliani, what a great way to kick things off here at Soccerex. And it is time, as you well said, for a very special moment. It is time to present the Revie Award. This is an award that recognizes people that have made a huge contribution to our game, not only here, not only in the US, not only in the region, but also worldwide, people that have had a huge impact in our game of soccer. So I want to welcome to the stage Rita Revie, who has been, as said by Mr. De Grossa, just a true pillar of Soccerex. So we're honored by your presence.
How are you? Good to see you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thank you.
And the winner is Mr. Victor Montagliani.
Good to see you as well.
Not an easy get, but this year's is truly a special edition of the Revie Award.
Amazing, by the way. Amazing. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations to Rita and to you, Mr. Montagliani.
¿Puedo decir dos palabras?
Por favor,
Gracias.
las que quiera.
Sí, bueno, en inglés, pero. First of all, Rita, thank you very much. It's a real honor. Talking about football and family, thinking an award named after Revie is really touching, because I know your family is a real football family. So, congratulate you for really starting this, and thank Joe and your team. And Concacaf is proud to be part of this event, and we look forward to coming back. And to be honest, it's great getting this award, but to be honest, like anything, this is about the people that you ride the shoulders of. And so I want to thank my team at Concacaf first and foremost, because at the end of the day, you know, it takes 11 players or 23 players to really do anything. So thank you very much, and it's an honor receiving an award with the name Revie attached to it. Thank you.